All along the road, General Gatwich stopped off at villages to greet old comrades from the long 20-year liberation struggle against the Arab government in Khartoum. Eventually, we stopped for the night at the forward base for the assault on Bor. The SPLA had taken over a tourist resort, Sudan Safari, as their divisional headquarters.
So we're here. This is our home for the night. We're about 9 kilometres south of the front line, or what was the front line. It looks like the SPLA have pushed forward. It's a nice place. Tourists used to come here before the war. Now it's an armed camp.
How are you?
I'm good. Put your sunglasses on. Yeah. Everyone's pretty chilled out. They're all just chatting, smoking, greeting friends they haven't seen for a while. They all say the rebels have fled, that Bor's already fallen. We'll see tomorrow if that's true or not. But for the moment, things are looking good for the SPLA. We're woken up by the sound of vehicles outside. Looks like they're getting ready to move on Bor. Hopefully we'll come with them. Will we be able to follow your troops up to Bor?
Yes. So you are free to cover our movement from where we are to the objective.
Yeah, we need you to go and see exactly.
Before first light, General Gatwich's commandos moved out towards Bor. As the sun rose, the SPLA infantry preparing to join them sang their war chants before battle, a tradition from the long days of guerrilla war against the north. Morale was high as the lead elements of the force pulled into position. Two battalions of infantry had been sent up the Nile by boat from Juba. It would be their job to take Bor, and they seemed to look forward to the battle ahead.
In some ways, they looked and moved like a professional army, but the overall effect, at times, was of a tribal militia.
It was time to move. We'd been held back from the infantry at the head of the column, for our own safety, the SPLA said. Instead, they placed us in the rear convoy, made up at the divisional headquarters with all the generals, supply troops, police, and the motley assortment of untrained Dinka civilians given uniforms and weapons and packed off to the war.
As we moved, the government forces made their weapons ready, trained soldiers giving the inexperienced volunteers last-minute tutoring in how to use their rifles. Government troops had been attacked here just 2 days earlier. We drove slowly through an eerie landscape of abandoned villages.
That was the recent attack, the day before yesterday.
You think the rebels have all run away from Bor?
They have not run away, they are there. They are not intending to run, they want to make it at their base.
Suddenly, a few shots rang out from the bush to our right. The convoy halted as soldiers tried to find the source of the fire.
We were driving up to the front line when they heard gunfire. The troops leapt out of the vehicles and facing towards that direction. We're all taking up position. This might be it. We're not far from Bor now.
The officers in charge ordered the troops back into their vehicles. This was just a warning of the trouble that would lie ahead. The rebels' ambushes would escalate in severity as they tested the government troops' strength and willingness to fight. Burned out tanks dotted the way ahead from the last time the government fled Bor, just a week or so earlier. Suddenly, there was a second burst of fire from our right.
We're just driving ahead into Bor. You can see the smoke from Bor burning in the distance, and then there was rifle fire from the right of us. We all jumped out.
The thick bush on our flank was meant to have been cleared by the infantry ahead of us. But clearly the rebels were still around and still up for a fight. The slow-moving convoy was a vulnerable target. As the mobile headquarters for the whole assault, with all the generals riding with us, it was the brain of the whole operation. If the rebels could take us out, the whole assault on Bor would be in danger. No one realised that the bloodiest ambush of the day was lying just ahead of us.
We're just on the outskirts of Bor. As soon as we hit the river crossing, it kicked off big time. There was incoming machine gun fire. The SPLA troops here returned fire with rockets mounted to the back of a truck. It's all chaos. They're pushing forward to clear the area straight ahead of us, the rebels.
pulled back to try and get behind cover. There wasn't much.
The enemy on this side are in the bush. They ambushed us as we came through. There's a heavy exchange of fire now, machine gun fire on both sides, as the government troops are really trying to push through the bush to attack the rebels who ambushed us.
Is there a medic?
Yeah.
It's unclear what they're going to do from here. We've got the Nile on our side here. We're kind of hemmed in between the rebels and the river.
It was a scene of utter chaos. There seemed to be little coordination between the different elements making up the convoy. While the infantry escorts mostly fought back, most of the police and militia ran around in circles without any direction from officers or NCOs.
But this RC soldiers, what actually happened is a pretty chaotic scene. And they said just behind that tree line, just there, the head of the convoy we were travelling in got ambushed, had a few soldiers killed. The enemy is still in there somewhere, so they're working out what to do next.
According to an officer I spoke to later, over 20 government soldiers were killed in this ambush, including a senior general and 3 of his bodyguards. The wounded and the dead were gathered together to be brought back to Juba by boat. Without any medics in the field, the outlook for the most seriously wounded was grim. It had been a costly few minutes for the South Sudanese army, but more troops were flooding in to lead the assault on Bor.
Bring up reinforcements, a whole battalion of infantry, the ones we saw earlier. We're going to head back on these speedboats to Juba with the dead and wounded.
The general's body was taken back to the previous night's base to be helicoptered back to Juba. The rebels had attacked us from the bush in the portion of the village to the right of the road. But instead of clearing the area, troops busied themselves with domestic tasks and foraging for lunch. The generals in charge made Pariak their new headquarters for the battle to come, but their position was more vulnerable than they realised. Just before dusk, the rebels launched an assault from the uncleared half of the village. Instantly, everyone fled, the officers running away first, leaving their men directionless and terrified. The force had entirely lost its nerve and broke.
We are not going!
It's a casualty here.
One soldier stopped our vehicle at gunpoint while his colleagues thrust their wounded friend inside.
Stop, let him in.
He'd been shot in the chest.
Get it!
We were just having dinner in the camp. Everything had stopped for a few hours. The soldiers were all cooking, cleaning, when suddenly we heard incoming rifle fire. The soldiers all just panicked and fled. We've all just bombed it down the road a few hundred metres. They're firing rockets back, but they obviously can't hold their positions, don't really know what they're doing. This isn't a good place to be.
We picked up a young platoon commander, the first South Sudanese to be trained at Britain's prestigious Royal Military Academy Sandhurst. His men had abandoned him, taking his vehicle.
The driver ran off with the car.
But the enemy, I thought they were just like kids with guns, but they seem to know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They can fight.
Yeah, they can fire. They came in few number, so that they can just confuse people.
Infiltrate.
Yes, that's what they're doing. By the way, it's now been 3 weeks, people are fighting, so the soldier, they become scared.
Yeah.
So whenever they heard the sound of gun, because they're losing their friend.
Along the road, a fleeing brigadier and some of his men jumped in. We tried to work out if the rebels had set up another ambush further down the road to catch fleeing troops, and whether it was safer to go back towards Juba or back towards the village.
No problem, they are coming here to stop all the military to go back.
In the end, we had no choice but to head back towards Juba, along with the rest of the convoy. This was the end of these troops as a coherent force, at least for that day.
Yesterday there was supposed to be a ceasefire in the end of tomorrow. There must be a ceasefire.
Yeah.
So whereby the two groups should have to talk in Addis Ababa. But this is not about Dinga and Nuer.
No, I know.
It's just a propaganda of the people saying that it's Dinga and Nuer.
But here, most of the rebels on this front, what are they?
The
on
rebels,
this front?
they are all Nuer. On their sides, it's like a tribal army. But in our side, some of Nuer, that was us. You see yesterday, the general who came with you,
Yes.
he's from Nuer. So he's his tribe. But he's standing with us, with the government.
The entire convoy drove through the dark, away from the fighting, racing each other to get away first. Finally, the force halted back at Mangala, barely outside the capital. It had been a bad day for the South Sudanese army.